Welcome to the Frost Swirl Infinity Hat by Brianna Kay. I'm so excited you joined me for this hat. It's a really new innovative technique that's used here, and so let's dive right in. When you work the crown of your hat, take a look really quick at the notes on the pattern. It talks about how these single crochet stitches should be worked, slightly different than maybe what you're used to. When we work a normal single crochet, we insert our hook into the stitch, we yarn over and we pull up a loop. And when we yarn over, we're placing the yarn over the hook. However, if we go ahead and place our hook over the yarn and then complete the single crochet stitch, it twists the stitch in a different direction. It does have a slightly different look. It's not too noticeable, it's still a really nice stitch. And what that will do for us, the advantages of when we work in the round by twisting the stitch that way, is our seam remains more straight. We stop having as much of a slanted seam working in the round, which is a common problem in a lot of crochet in the round. This way our seam stays straight, which also lines up a lot of these stitches that's easier to use for tapestry or the infinity crochet method in the round. When we're working cables on top, we want our stitches to line up pretty straight because we're placing a very straight symbol on top. So let's begin with round one of the beginning infinity symbol. At this point, you should either have 34 single crochet stitches in this round for child, 37 for teen, 40 for adult, and 43 for large adult. The next step we're going to do is the opening curve. Now the opening curve will count as 4 single crochet stitches and 2 floating stitches. To start the opening curve, we will count over 2 stitches, so 1, 2, and then we're going to go down 2 rounds, 1, 2. So this stitch right here is the stitch we're going to use to create our opening curve. We will yarn over twice to do a treble, insert into that stitch, and complete the treble crochet. This is now the beginning of our opening curve. We need to go over here to complete the other side, and we are not going to skip any stitches. We will still go right behind where we just worked, and we're going to single crochet the 2 that we counted over, and then we're going to single crochet into the next 2. So 4 stitches total between these opening curve lines without skipping any background single crochet stitches. This stitch will simply hang out and float on the front. Turn your work just slightly. I find it a bit easier to work the other side by turning your work. And we are going to once again do a treble crochet, so yarn over twice. If you want your stitch to be very consistent, you can pull it and kind of curve it up a little bit onto your hook. That will leave less of a gap at the end. We're going to insert into the base of that first curved line, and then we will complete our treble crochet. And now we can see how that opening curve has taken shape. Now we will simply single crochet the rest of the round and come right back, and I will show you how to work the rest of the even rows for this infinity symbol. For round 2 of the beginning infinity symbol, we will be working all of our single crochet stitches, and we are going to skip our front floating stitches. We're not going to work them, we're just going to let them hang out. Sometimes you just got to let things do their thing. Alright, so we're going to leave this one be. Let them be. Skip over that floating stitch and simply go to the next single crochet. And then when you get to the other side of this opening curve, you'll once again let that stitch be, let it do its thing, skip over it, and go to the next single crochet and finish single crocheting in the round. At the end of this round, your stitch count should be 72 single crochet for child, 78 for teen, 84 for adult, and 90 for large adult. On all the even rounds left in this pattern, this is all we're going to do. So I'm not going to show you every one of those rounds because every even round is the same. We're going to single crochet around with that single crochet stitch count, and we're going to skip all the front float stitches. This will be for round 3 and also for round 5 since they are the same. You will single crochet 34 for child, 37 for teen, 40 for adult, and 43 for large adult. And now we are going to work a front floating double crochet. To do this, we'll yarn over once and we will be working into this floating stitch. Now if you want to work these as post stitches where you go around the entire stitch and then complete the double crochet, that's fine. A trick that I do that I find combines these front float lines a lot smoother and cleaner is to, instead of going around the entire stitch, go through the stitch and only pick up 1 to 2 strands of yarn instead of all 3. Then complete your front floating double crochet. I find it gives a little bit of a smoother line transition between these stitches. Now we will single crochet 4 without skipping any of those background single crochet stitches. And then once again, we will do a front float double crochet around this next front floating stitch. And then we will continue to single crochet the rest of the round. Repeat this for round 5 as well. Now that you completed round 6 by skipping those post stitches, let's move on to round 7. You will have single crocheted either 26, 29, 32, or 35, and now our next step is to do another opening curve. We'll do this the same way we did before, where we will count over 2 stitches and then we are going to count down 2 rounds. And that's the stitch we want to use. We are going to do a treble floating stitch. Then we will single crochet 4. And now we will join our floating stitches at the base by doing another treble floating stitch. And then we will continue on by single crocheting in the next 6. Now right here we are going to bring our lines together, and to do that we will front float treble crochet twice. So we're going to go around the first available front float, and now we're going to go around the next available front float. And as you can see, that brings those lines together. Now without skipping any stitches, we are going to single crochet into the next 6. Now we will do another opening circle. Count over 2, down 2 rounds. There's the stitch we want to use. Single crochet 4. And now we want to connect that opening curve by doing another front float treble crochet into the base of that first opening curve line. And now we single crochet into the remaining stitches in the round. So as we can see, we've got this nice curved line here, and we have 2 opening circle curves. Be sure to skip all front float stitches on round 8. For round 9, you will have started the round by doing 24 single crochet stitches for child, 27 for teen, 30 for adult, and 32 for large adult. Our next step after that is to do a front floating treble crochet into the next available front floating stitch. So we'll yarn over twice, insert our stitch into that front float stitch, and complete our treble. And then we will single crochet 8 without skipping any of the background stitches, so you will kind of be working behind the front float stitch you just made, and you will single crochet 8. Now we're going to do another front float treble crochet into the next available front float stitch. Now we will single crochet in the next 2. And here's where we will do our very first 4-stitch left cross. What we will do is we will yarn over twice. We're going to skip this first front float and go to the next one, and we will do a front float treble crochet into that. Then we are going to single crochet 4, which is why this is a 4-stitch cross. There will be 4 stitches in between these front float stitches crossing. And now, working over the stitch we just made, we will yarn over twice and do a front floating treble crochet into that skipped floating stitch. And this creates a beautiful cross. The next thing we will do is single crochet in each of the next 2. And now, working on this side, we will once again do a front floating treble crochet into this first front float stitch, single crochet in the next 8, and then working on this last floating stitch available, we will do another front floating treble crochet. And like I said, I like to just pick up a couple strands of that front float instead of doing a full post stitch. It takes a little bit more finessing, but I like the way that the lines join. For the rest of this round, we will simply single crochet to the end, and once again on our even rounds we will single crochet, leaving the floating stitches unworked. For round 11, we will start the round by single crocheting the first 23 for child, 26 for teen, 29 for adult, and 32 for large adult. The next step will be to do a front float double crochet around the next available front float stitch. Then we want to single crochet 9, being sure not to skip any of our background single crochet stitches. Now we come to our very first front float 2-stitch left cross. To do this, we will skip this first front float stitch right here, and we will work the second front float stitch. We will yarn over twice to do a treble front float, and we'll do it around that second stitch. Now we will single crochet 2, which is why it's called a 2-stitch left cross. And now, working over the front float stitch we just made, we will yarn over 2 and go back to complete the stitch that we skipped by doing a front floating treble crochet. Sometimes I hold the base of my stitch. It kind of helps so that it doesn't stretch out so much. Then we will single crochet into the next 4. And over here we will be doing a 2-stitch right cross. It will start the same way, where we skip this front float stitch and we will work this one first. So we yarn over twice and we do a treble crochet. Then we will still single crochet 2. And now we will be working under the front float stitch we just made instead of over. So yarn over twice, go under that front float stitch, grab the stitch that we had skipped, and complete that front float treble crochet. Now we will single crochet 9. and do a front float double crochet. And now for the rest of the round, we will simply complete it by doing the single crochet stitches to the end. And then on the even round, we will skip all of these front float stitches. So now we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 front float stitches to skip, but our single crochet stitches still remain the same. For round 13, you should start with single crocheting 23 for child, 26 for teen, 29 for adult, and 32 for large adult. Our next step after that will be to do a front float double crochet around the next available front float stitch. Then we will single crochet 3, and now we're going to do one of our opening circles, which you're getting to be a pro at this. So for the opening curve, count over 2, down 2, and do a front post treble, which is like a front floating stitch for that opening curve. Single crochet 4, making sure not to skip any. And now we will kind of turn our work to be able to complete that opening curve by doing a front floating treble crochet into the base of the previous one. Now our next step after this is to go right into a front floating treble, which will go into this stitch right here. That's the next available front floating stitch. So we've kind of got 2 together. So once again on the even round we'll skip both of those. Then we will single crochet into the next 6. Now we're going to do a front float treble twice, which means we'll just work over the next 2 front float stitches. So this is the first one available, so we will do a front floating treble around that. And now we'll go ahead and do a front floating treble around the next available front float stitch. That's bringing those lines together. And now we will single crochet 6. And here we will do a front floating treble around the next available front float stitch. And now we're going to go right into our opening curve. So we will count over 2 and down 2 rows in order to do that opening curve with a front float treble. Single crochet 4. Complete the other side of that opening curve, yarn over twice, go into the base of the opening curve stitches, complete the front post treble. We will single crochet 3, and now we will do a front floating double crochet. And for the rest of the round, you're golden to just do those single crochets. So if you notice this design is getting quite intense on this round, feel free to rewind and look at that again. But where it's really coming together and we're building this beautiful symbol round by round. And now we have more front floating stitches to skip over when we do our even round of simple single crochets. Welcome to round 15. In this round, things will start to get a little bit easier when we're done because we're going to go ahead and drop some of our front floating stitches by closing them. To start this round, you will have single crocheted 23 for child, 26 for teen, 29 for adult, and 32 for large adult. The next step we will do is a front float double crochet around the next available front float stitch. We will then single crochet into the next 5. And now we will begin our closing curve with a left cross. The reason why it's important to remember that this will cross right here is because we will work our closing curve a little bit differently. We're going to go ahead and skip the first 2 front floating stitches, and we're going to work this third one first. We will yarn over twice and start to do a front post treble crochet, but we will stop when we have 2 loops on our hook. Then we will yarn over twice and go back to that first skipped floating stitch, and we will once again do a front post treble crochet, but we will stop with 2 loops on our hook. Then we will go behind our work and find that next available single crochet. We will yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops on the hook, and this right here is going to count as 1 single crochet. Moving on, we will single crochet in the next 3. And here's where we are going to complete our left cross. This stitch is still hanging out. He needs to be worked. So we yarn over twice and we come back to him, going over the stitches we just created, and we complete a front post treble crochet. Now we will single crochet into the next 2, which brings us to a right cross. To do our right cross, we will yarn over twice, skip this first one and go to the second floating stitch, front post treble around that stitch, then we will single crochet 4 because it's a 4 stitch right cross. And now working under the stitch we just made, we will do another front post treble crochet. Getting pretty fast on that one starting. Okay. Now after this, we will do 2 single crochets. And now we've come to the next side where we will once again do a closure with a left cross. We're going to go ahead and take care of that left cross first by skipping this first front floating stitch, yarning over twice, and doing the second front floating stitch to connect. So we've got that front post treble that's connecting to the second floating stitch. Now we will go ahead and work 4 single crochets. And now we want to do our closing curve, and we're going to use this floating stitch over here, working over the one we just made, and we're going to join these 2 stitches to create that nice closing curve. To do this, we will yarn over twice. We're going to go all the way to this left stitch by skipping this one, and we're going to work a front post treble, only we will stop with 2 loops on our hook, yarn over twice, working over this front float stitch. We will pick up this guy that's hanging out here, and we will complete another front floating treble crochet, but we will leave 2 loops on our hook. We will go into the very next available single crochet, and then we will pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on our hook, and this once again counts as a single crochet. Now we will single crochet into the next 4, and now we will do a front post double crochet, and the rest of the stitches in the round will just be a single crochet. Now when you work round 16 coming back, these stitches above here are single crochets, so we'll just work them as that. We're not going to worry about these front posts anymore because they're joined and semi-dropped. We don't think about them as being part of our active stitches any longer. Now for round 17. To start this round, you will single crochet 24 for child, 27 for teen, 30 for adult, and 33 for large adult. The next step will be to do a front floating double crochet into the first floating stitch. And then we will single crochet into the next 8. And now we will do a 2-stitch right cross. We will yarn over twice, skip this first floating stitch and go to the second, complete that front floating treble, single crochet into the next 2, and since this is a right cross, we will be working the next front floating stitch underneath the one we just created by yarning over 2, going under, picking up that floating stitch that we had skipped, and completing that front floating treble. Then we will single crochet 4, and now we will be doing a 2-stitch left cross. So we will start out by skipping the first floating stitch and working the second with a front floating treble, single crochet into the next 2, and since this is a left cross, we will be working over the stitch we just made, coming back to the front float we skipped and working a front post treble. Now we will single crochet into the next 8. And we will complete a front post double crochet. In the rest of this round, we will simply single crochet, and then on the even round, we will skip those front post stitches and single crochet into the rest. For round 19, we will start the round with a single crochet 26 for child, 29 for teen, 32 for adult, and 35 for large adult. The next step will be to do a front post treble crochet into the first available front post stitch. We will then single crochet into the next 4. We will do another front post treble crochet into the next available front post stitch. Then we will single crochet into each of the next 6 single crochets. And now we will be doing 2 front floating treble crochets. We'll start with the first available one. And then we're going to go to the next available one, which is this one right here. And do another front floating treble. And now we will continue on by not skipping any single crochets on the back and doing single crochet 6. And then we will do a front floating treble into the next available front floating stitch. We will single crochet into the next 4. And do a front floating treble. And for the rest of this round, we will simply single crochet to the end. And here we go on round 21. You will single crochet in the first 28 for child, 31 for teen, 34 for adult, and 37 for extra large adult. Now what we will do is our first closing curve. To do this, we will yarn over twice. We're going to skip this first front post stitch and we are going to do a front post treble into the second, but we will stop with 2 loops on our hook. Now we will yarn over twice again and we'll go back to the stitch that we had skipped and we will do a front post treble into this stitch as well, but we will leave 2 loops on our hook. Now we will go to the next single crochet and we will insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. And once again, we've created a single crochet here and we've dropped 2 front post stitches that we no longer need to worry about. We will then single crochet in each of the next 5. And here we come to a 4-stitch left cross. So we won't work this first front post, we'll go right to the second front post and work a front floating treble crochet. We will single crochet 4. And now working over the front floating stitch we just made, we will yarn over twice and work a front floating treble again. And this will create our left cross. Now we will single crochet into the next 6. And once again, we will do a closing curve just like we did a few seconds ago. We'll yarn over twice, go to the second by skipping the first floating stitch, and we will do a front floating, oh, I only yarned over once. We will do a front floating treble, but we will stop with 2 loops on the hook, yarn over twice again, and go to the stitch that we skipped, and do a front post treble, only leaving 2 loops on the hook. We'll go into our very next available single crochet. We will yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and once again we just created a single crochet and dropped 2 post stitches. For the rest of the round, we will single crochet 27 for child, 30 for teen, 33 for adult, and 36 for large adult. And that will get us back to our beginning. Alright, for row 23, we're going to see that my hat has changed colors. This is because I was certain I had 2 skeins of this, and when I got to this round I realized I did not. So learn from my mistake and either double check your stash or just get a bigger stash, which is what I need to do. So for round 23, for the first stitches, they will be worked as a front post or back post single crochets. That for child size, it'll be worked in 15 groups of those, for teens 17, for adult 18, and for adult large 20. Then you will work some single crochet stitches. There will be 4 for child, 3 for 4 for child, 3 for teen, 4 for adult, and 3 for large adult. So now that we're at that point, I'm going to go ahead and still work my floating stitches in my main color, and I'm just going to work my background stitches in the secondary color, but continue to work yours in one solid color. So our next stitch will be a front post double crochet. And go ahead and ignore my color change here. And then you're going to single crochet into the next 4. It's going to be a little bit more challenging for me, I think. And then after you've single crocheted 4, we will go ahead and do one more front post or front floating double crochet. And for this round, that's the only front floating stitches that we have. The rest will be worked as the pattern states. You will either be doing 4 or 3 single crochets here and then using the front post and back post stitches to get all the way back to the starting point. Here we are at round 27. I've skipped round 25 and 26 for the video because they are simply a repeat of round 23 and 24. At this point on round 27, you will have done front post single crochet and back post single crochet in sets of either 15 for child, 17 for teen, 18 for adult, and 20 for large adult. And then you will have done either 6 single crochet for child, 5 for teen, 6 for adult, and 5 for large adult. And we're ready to do our next stitch, which is a closing curve. And this will complete the design on here, so that's really exciting. I'm going to switch colors because I foolishly did not check my stash, but I kind of dig how this is turning out. But you'll be working this in one color. You will go ahead and yarn over twice, and we're going to skip that first front float stitch, and we are going to work the next front float stitch by inserting our hook, completing a treble crochet until we have 2 loops on our hook. Then we'll yarn over twice again, go back to the skipped front float stitch, and we are going to do a treble crochet into that one. I like to hook at least a couple pieces of yarn on this. And then we are going to stop working this front floating treble crochet with 2 loops on our hook. We will insert into the very next stitch, which mine's a little wonky because I've got colors in the way here, but our very next stitch. Then we are going to yarn over, you don't need to change colors, but I am, and complete that single crochet style stitch to be done with our design on top. So it's really exciting. I hope you've enjoyed working this so far. And then we will continue on by following the instructions and either single crocheting 5 for child, 4 for teen, 5 for adult, and 4 for large adult, and then you will complete your sets of front post single crochet and back post single crochet until the end. So here we are at the end of this beautiful hat. I hope you've enjoyed the journey and finishing those last 2 rounds that were just working the single crochet stitches underneath the design and those front post and back post single crochet stitches to continue this ribbing. I really enjoyed doing this project with you, and I hope you come back and do some more with me. The nice thing about this project is some of these lines will even out if you position them and block your piece. I always recommend blocking pieces to relax some of those stitches and position them just a little bit more where you want them to get them nice and clean. Also, I learned something in this video, and that's that mistakes that first cause us a lot of panic and anxiety end up being the turning point to success. So I'm actually really happy with this color change right here. It ended up kind of being at the perfect point if it had to happen. In the future, I would prefer to have more yarn so that I never ever run out, but that would be a perfect world. And I really hope you enjoy everything in this video, and I'll see you again on the next one.